Hey students, it's Mr. Wilson here, ready to give you guys the general safety test presentation. Everything I'm talking about today is for your own safety and how to be as safe as possible in the shop. You will have a test at the end of this presentation, so please make sure that you are paying attention because anything I talk about has the possibility of being on the safety test. Now, the actual questions and what score you need to get, we'll talk about at the end of the presentation. And so this is going to come into 4 different sections, and so let's get started with the first section. So section 1, we're going to talk about everything that we need to do before entering the shop. So you might think that safety only occurs while you're in the shop. It actually begins before you even enter the shop. So let's talk about the machines you're going to be using in the shop. They all work in pretty much the same way by spinning some sort of cutting blade at high speeds to remove the material. So a few examples in there. You've got a drill bit. So there's your cutting blade that's on a drill press that spins at high speeds and it drills a hole into a board. Sandpaper would be considered a type of cutting blade. It's got small different particles of sand that are glued on a piece of paper, and when spun at high speeds can take off a small or large amount of wood to give you a cleaner surface. A saw blade, this is probably the most common one you guys see, is on a table saw or a bandsaw blade. You spin those at high speeds and it can cut the boards in half or into different shapes. And so with that, you need to think about things when they're spinning at high speeds can easily get caught on other things. And so that's what we want to talk about today is how can you make sure that you are preparing yourself before you go in the shop that there's nothing on you that could potentially get caught on one of these spinning blades. The other thing to keep in mind is that machines don't know the difference between you, the operator, and the material to be cut. All it knows how to do is to spin that blade and to cut through whatever is in the way of the blade. And so if we do not remember that, we oftentimes could get hurt. And so we have to make sure that we are following all the safety rules that we can to make sure that we don't get injured. And so with that last thing, it says, what can you do to stay safe using machines? Let's talk about that. So there's a phrase I want you guys to remember in regards to getting yourself physically ready for things on you for the shop, and it's to remove or secure. All right, so say that in your head right now, remove or secure. That's the question you're going to ask yourself. And so we're going to actually do a head-to-toe check. So we're going to start at the top of our head all the way down to the bottom of our feet and talk about what we would need to remove or secure in order to make sure that we stay safe in the shop. So let's start with our head. So hair, if you have longer hair, if it touches at least your shoulders or below that, you need to secure your hair by wearing it back in a hair tie. Now I have extra hair ties in my shop if you do not have one. That you guys are able to pull your hair back. Okay, so remember we're talking about secure or remove, so we would secure our hair. Ears, if you have any sort of piercings in your ears, you want to make sure that if they are studs, you're okay, because those are going to be really hard to get caught on something. But if there's anything that's dangling from your earlobe, you're going to want to remove that from your ear. We would hate for that to get caught onto anything. Okay, so hair you pull back by securing it with a hair tie, and ears, you remove anything that is going to dangle from your ear. Okay, moving a little bit further, we've got our eyes. Eyes are really important to keep safe in the shop. We have lots of small particles flying around at high speeds, and so we want to protect those eyes. And so to protect our eyes, we're going to secure a pair of safety glasses on your face at all times when you are in the shop. So as soon as you walk into that shop, you're going to get a pair of safety glasses. You keep those on until the end of the time that you're in the shop, and you'll put those away. If you wear prescription eyeglasses, these will count as your safety glasses. You don't need to try to put goggles over your glasses. I will let you count your actual prescription glasses as your safety glasses. So remember, we secure safety glasses to protect our eyes. Okay, continuing down from head to toe check. We've got our neck. If you wear anything around your neck, whether it's a necklace or jewelry or a lanyard, it must be removed before entering the shop. Okay, so there's really no securing of any of those things. We just remove them, get them out of the way. Second, hoodies. If you are going to wear a hoodie, the first choice should be to remove it. Now, I understand that's not always an option. Therefore, if you are going to wear a hoodie in the shop, those hoodie strings are notorious for getting caught on things, especially in the shop. And so we want to make sure we secure those. but in order to secure them, we have to tie them into a bow around your neck, okay? So we're not going to tuck them into the neck of your hoodie, okay? Because that's not actually securing it, that's just tucking it away. We're actually going to tie it into a bow on the front of us to make sure that that is not going to get caught on anything. So we remove the hoodie or we secure the hoodie strings by tying them into a bow. Okay, continuing down. Let's continue talking about jackets and sweaters. I understand that sometimes it's cold in the shop, you're going to want to wear a jacket, or maybe that's just part of your outfit, and so it's kind of hard to remove. So obviously the first choice would be to remove your jacket or sweaters. If that's not really an option or you would like to keep that on, that's fine, but it needs to be secured by keeping it zipped up or buttoned up. If it can't be zipped or buttoned up, it needs to be removed. So things like cardigans that maybe don't have buttons on them, that needs to be removed. I know if you wear some sort of kimono jacket that doesn't, again, have a zipper or a button, we would need to remove those. So please make sure that you wear appropriate attire when you come to class when we're in the shop, just to make sure that this is not an issue for you. So remove or secure. Okay, let's continue on. We're going to talk about our arms. So let's talk about our wrists. Bracelets and watches. So any sort of bracelet we're going to want to remove from our wrist because we don't want to get them caught on anything. Watches are in that same realm, but also a lot of you wear expensive watches, things like smartwatches or Apple Watches or Fitbits or whatnot. Those are all somewhat pricey. I don't want you guys to get those broken or scratched, and there's lots of things in the shop that can do that very easily to your watches. So please make sure that you take those off, stick them in your backpack, to keep those safe. Now your forearms. Sleeves are, again, another thing that can put you in harm's way if they get caught on things. And so we always want to make sure if you're wearing long sleeves in the shop that you pull up those sleeves so that I can see your forearms. So make sure at all times in the shop your forearms are visible. So this would be avoid wearing anything that's going to be baggy or bell sleeve that makes it near impossible to pull up those sleeves. If you don't know what those are, don't worry about it. But just make sure we want to be able to see our forearms so that nothing gets caught. Continuing down, pants and shorts. I don't care whether you wear shorts or pants. We just want to make sure that we follow the school dress code. The most important thing in regards to your legs is shoes. We want to make sure that we have closed-toed shoes on to protect your toes from getting stepped on or if wood dropped onto them. Having a pair of shoes that covers those toes keeps that extra protection. So things like sandals or flip-flops or high heels or whatnot are things that should not be worn. So make sure your toes are covered, flat sole. Awesome. So just again, remember, when we're checking ourselves from head to toe, we want to first remove it if possible, and second, secure it if we can't remove it. Okay, so as long as you remember remove or secure from head to toe, you're going to be great with this first section. Okay, let's talk about actually going into the shop. We talked about being safe, getting prepared to come into the shop. Now that we're actually in the shop, let's talk about some of those safety rules. So first things, we're going to talk about the operator zones. So when you are using a machine, you are the operator of that machine. And as the operator, you have some authority over the space in the machine that you use that others don't have at that moment. So when you're the operator, you have what this area around you is called as an operator zone. And so that's the area that you stand in as the operator of a machine. Okay, so it's typically about arm's distance around you as you're using a machine. So if you're at the drill press, everybody should be away from that general area because it is your zone. And you are welcome to ask people to step back a little bit further so that you have enough space to be able to work. It also keeps others safe as well because if you stay outside that operator zone, typically that zone is where if boards are going to get flung or an accident might happen that you can't control, as long as you have nobody in that area, there's less people potentially to get hurt. And so an operator zone is the area that you stand in as the operator machine. Because you are the operator, that means you're the only person that is allowed in that zone. So only one person is allowed in that zone. You're also the only one that can turn on and off the machine. So you're the one that hits that green on button. You're the one that hits that red off button. No one else can do it for you. And then as the operator, you must wait until the machine has come to a complete stop after turning off the machine. Most machines take a few seconds, all the way up to 10 to 15, 20 seconds for that blade to come to a complete stop. Until that machine is at a complete stop, you are responsible for anything that happens to it. And so please make sure that as you're using those machines that you don't walk away from them until they're completely off, completely stopped, and everything's in working condition for the next person to come in and be the operator. Next, horseplay. Most of you probably know what horseplay is. Horseplay is goofing off, shoving, yelling, screaming, distracting, anything that could cause attention to be lost or potentially to hurt someone. And so specifically in the shop, horseplay can look like some of these things. So on the left, if you're talking over the teacher during instruction, this does happen from time to time when I'm trying to give a presentation in the shop or trying to show you how to use a tool, and there's people talking in the background. This would be a form of verbal horseplay. Okay, you're not paying attention to the instruction you're supposed to be listening to, and because you're talking, it now can be disruptive to those around you, and they're not getting the information they need. Which puts you both at a disservice because now you're not getting the information you need to keep yourself safe or to do the project. Shoving, this could be anything from a very light shove to a big physical shove. We don't want to make any sort of physical contact with other people in the shop. So please make sure you keep your hands to yourself while we are in the shop. Distracting operators. So when an operator is using a machine, all their attention and focus needs to be on using that machine and then being done with the machine. And so any sort of loud noises, unnecessary noise, or movement that could distract an operator would be considered a form of horseplay. And then finally, if you're using a tool without permission, so you pull out a clamp, you pull out a pencil that's not yours, using anything in the shop that you don't have explicit permission from the teacher to use will be form of horseplay. Now, why are all these things bad? I've talked about a few of those, but let's look at the right side of the screen. Horseplay is bad because, number one, it's disruptive to learning. Okay? When you're doing any of these things on the left-hand side, you're not paying attention to what you should be doing in class. And because you're not paying attention, you're now potentially being a disruption to other people and their ability to learn. And so we want to make sure that we're following the rules in the shop so everybody can make sure they stay safe and are learning what they need to. Second, this is the one that I'm most worried about, is that it can cause an accident. The issue with horseplay is that most of the time the person that is doing the horseplay is not the one that gets hurt. It's this domino effect that they're screwing around, they're shoving, they're yelling, and somebody else who's following the rules gets hurt because they were the disruption. And so we just want to make sure we have no accidents in the shop, and so please make sure you keep that in mind. And then finally, it's forbidden at all times in the shop. We just don't do anything like this. A lot of stuff is okay sometimes in the classroom, in the hallways, when you're hanging out with your friends. A lot of stuff is not a big deal. But in the shop, when we're dealing with machines that, remember at the beginning I talked to you about, don't know the difference between you and a piece of wood, we have to be super cautious about what we're doing. Final thing is that I'm not the only one that has to enforce this. Okay, as a student, as a person in the shop using these tools, you have just as much authority to tell the person next to you to be quiet, or for them to step back, or to make sure that they step out of the class or out of the shop, so they don't cause any of these accidents if they are playing around. Okay, and so this is a big one. We want to make sure that we're taking this one super seriously. Okay, moving on, tool safety. So there's two parts to this slide. First one is guards. Most machines will have a guard in place that is designed to expose a little of the blade as needed. And so I'll show this to you a little bit more when we actually get into the shop. But something, for instance, is the bandsaw. The bandsaw, you could potentially have 12 to 18 inches of that blade exposed. But it's rare that you're ever going to need all 18 inches of that exposed blade. And so you cover up as much of the blade that you don't need as possible. So you might only have an inch of the blade exposed. And so guards are meant to keep you safe from the part of the blade that doesn't need to be exposed. And so if you are using a machine that should have a guard in place, please check with the teacher before using the machine. There is rare moments when a teacher might need to use a machine without a guard because of a specific type of cut. But that would be something only the teacher would do. And so if you ever notice a blade or a guard that should be in place covering part of the blade, double check with the teacher before actually using it. Now the other side of tool safety is the blade, because we talked about how all machines you work with some form of cutting blade. We're going to want those blades sharp. And so they're going to get dull. And so dull tools, this is what you need to remember, is that dull tools are more dangerous than sharp tools. Now, a lot of you might be like, but Mr. Wilson, a sharp tool could cut you more or faster. That's true. All tools, if used improperly, can hurt you. A dull blade can still cut your finger. A sharp blade can still cut your finger. And that's not what we're necessarily talking about here. What we're talking about is that when you're using a tool, you want to put as little effort into it as possible because that keeps you safe. The more effort you have to put into a tool or into a blade working, the more vulnerable you become to getting hurt. And so if you just read through this right here, dull tools are more dangerous because they require more effort to produce a lesser quality finish than a sharp tool. And so we always want to make sure we're using the sharpest tools that we can. So just remember that dull tools are more dangerous than sharp tools. Okay, combustible chemicals. So a combustible chemical is any sort of chemical that can easily catch fire. And in the shop, you're going to have things such as wood finishes and spray paint are the ones you're going to most commonly come across. And so anything that has those on there that shouldn't, things like rags or paper towels or maybe your hand, we want to make sure that we clean those up and then dispose of those cleaning rags in the right way. And throwing them into the garbage can is not the right way. So if we look at the center right here, so 3 things for a fire to be successful is that it needs oxygen, it needs heat or the initial ignition, and fuel to be able to burn. And so chemicals that can easily start on fire already have the heat, that initial ignition. In a shop where there's lots of sawdust, has the fuel and also has the oxygen. So the shop is a terrible place for an accidental fire to happen. And so we want to make sure anything that is very easily can start on fire is disposed of properly. And so we have a little red, it looks like a red garbage can in the shop, but it's metal, it's an approved, and it's covered. Okay? And so approved just makes sure that it's passed all the safety tests it needs to. Covered prevents the amount of oxygen that it can have in there. And metal, most trash cans are plastic, and so plastic can easily melt. And so we want metal, something that can't easily melt. And so it would contain a fire if it were to start one. Okay, so we just want to remember any sort of rags containing combustible chemicals get disposed of in an approved covered metal container. Okay, teacher approval. So 2 parts to this. Teacher approval is required for all projects in the shop. So there's not going to be a time where you're just going to be able to pick whatever project you want and just do whatever you want in the shop. We're not at that level. And so you just want to make sure that you always have permission from the teacher to be able to work on a project in the shop. The second thing is that in order to use any sort of tool, you also need to have permission to use any tool in the shop. And so please make sure that you're seeking for that teacher approval for both of those things. Okay, asking and reporting. So there's going to be times in the shop that you might have questions or things don't seem right. And so you're going to want to ask about them or report them. And so let's talk about a couple of situations like that. So if you're unsure how to use a tool, make sure you ask for help. Okay, if you're not quite sure, maybe you've asked your neighbor, you still don't feel comfortable, come grab the teacher. That's the best person to ask for help, and they're always going to be willing to help you no matter how many times you've asked the question. The second thing is if something doesn't look right, don't use it and ask for help. And maybe a bit has come off of the drill press, or maybe a clamp has fallen down, or it just doesn't look right, doesn't feel right. Ask for help. Let's get it double checked. It's always better to ask for help than have an accident happen. On the flip side, if you see an unsafe condition, you also want to report it. If you know it's unsafe, maybe you see a couple kids in class that are goofing around, they're horseplaying, and you've asked them to stop, they're not listening. This is an unsafe condition. Report it to the teacher so that it can be handled properly. And then finally, if an accident happens, no matter how small, it needs to be reported to the teacher. Anything from a small paper cut, to anything bigger. We want to make sure that we report any sort of injury to the teacher. Okay, so that covers our second section of things in the shop. So now we're into our third section of cleaning the shop. The thing about working in the wood shop is that it's going to be very messy very quickly because sawdust gets everywhere. And so a clean shop does take participation from everyone. And so there's some general rules on how we can quickly and efficiently get the shop cleaned. So the first rule is that we always work from top to bottom. And so using a bench brush, and so this is a picture of the actual bench brush you're going to use in class. We're going to work from the top of those machines down to the workbench or the counter. In the wood shop, it's called a workbench. And you're going to sweep everything off those machines, off the counter, onto the floor. So we start from the top to the bottom to get everything onto the floor. Then once we've done that, We will then start sweeping up the floor, but we want to use the outside to inside approach. We're going to start in the perimeter of the shop and work our way in. Just like a jigsaw puzzle, you're always going to start with those edge pieces because they're easy to find and then be able to work from the outside in. It's just the most efficient way that we go from top to bottom, outside to inside. Once we have those piles of sawdust and scrap wood, we're going to use the black metal dustpan to sweep those up and put them into the scrap wood trash can. After we've done this, we've gotten as much sawdust as we can off the machines, off the counter, off the floor. You most likely will have sawdust on you. And the easiest way to get that off of you is to use a blue blower. Or at least in our shop, it's a blue hand blower. These are super nice to be able to get yourself kind of all the sawdust off, but they can also pose some harm if used wrong. So the biggest thing on this is that we only use the blue hand blower for anything below our neck. So we're only going to blow off our shirt, we're only going to blow off our pants, we're only going to blow off our feet. We will not use this to blow off our face, our hair, the back of our head, because we don't want it to hit anything like our eyes, our mouth, or our ears. It can actually do harm if you have too much air pressure near any of those three places. And so we only go from neck below. Next step for cleaning, we're going to want to make sure we take our safety glasses off and we put them in the goggle sanitation cabinet, which uses a UV light treatment to kill any bacteria and viruses off of those safety glasses. Nice thing about these is it allows us to be able to share glasses but still be able to sanitize them in a quick and efficient way. And so that will be on the wall that you guys can put those glasses back. And the last thing, the one area that we often forget, we do a really good job cleaning the shop, we do a really good job of blowing off our shirt and our pants and our shoes, but we forget the bottom of our shoes. And then we end up with a track of sawdust footprints in our carpeted classroom. So please make sure to stomp off or even sweep off the bottoms of your shoes with a bench brush before we enter the classroom. This isn't a big deal, it's going to happen, but I don't want to add any extra work onto our janitors who do a great job of keeping our school clean. Let's reduce the amount of work they have to do. And so if we just take that extra couple seconds to stomp our feet or to use a bench brush to sweep off the bottom of our shoes, it'll help a lot. Okay, section 4. So that you have all the information you need to take this test, let's talk about the actual test. Okay, so first thing to keep in mind is in order to participate in any woodshop related project, you have to first have a signed parent permission slip that indicates that your parents are okay with you using the woodshop here at school. If you're not sure whether your parents have signed this permission slip, please check with me and I will let you know and we'll get that arranged if you don't have that. Number 2, you have to get 100% on the general safety test. Not 99%, not 98%, but 100%. You have to get every question right to show me that you have understood what you need to do to stay safe in the shop. And then number 3, for any tool that you're going to use in the shop, you have to take an individual tool test on that machine. And so you've got anywhere from 2 to 5 safety tests that you're going to need to take and get 100% on in order to actually start your project. Grades. Everybody asks this on your safety test. So all safety tests that you take will go on your grade as an assessment. And remember, assessments are worth a higher percent than assignments on your grade. So this can have a big impact on your grade. But also keep in mind that there is no limit to the number of times you can take each test. So whether you get 100% on the first try or you get 100% on the 10th try, the score that's going to go on your grade is that 100%, which means that these safety tests will only benefit your grade if that's what you're worried about. Okay? So just keep that in mind that you will be able to take this test as many times as needed. I'll be here to help you with any question that you got wrong, but the goal is that we need to get you to that 100% so that I know you know how to be safe in the shop. Fantastic. You guys now have all the information that you guys need to be able to get 100% on this safety test. So you're going to go on to Canvas and take the general safety test. Make sure that you get 100% on that. If you don't, you will be able to retake it as many times as you need to. Good luck.